I think he's going to be – oh, there we go. Hey! I pressed the button. Finally, it works. Oh, boy. Sorry, guys. No, there's been – I'm sure anybody who's on the internet knows there's been some widespread issues. I've had trouble getting on Facebook. I've had trouble starting the show. And a few other things, but we're here, and it's really crappy in Buffalo, of course, but what do you expect? It's Buffalo. But Russ, start us off with the pre-show.
Sure. It's 80 and sunny here, Mike. I just thought I'd tell you. Anyhow, so the pre-show is you never know what's going to happen with sports. This is why Kevin Allen says he loves sports, and this is why I love sports. So I went to the Jet game yesterday for my birthday, and full knowing that they're 0-3 and could easily go 0-4 and nobody would have an eyelash. So you listen to the pregame show on the way in on Sirius. They gave the Jets a 0.0 chance of winning, and Derrick Henry was going to run for 200 yards, which we all thought. And he probably ended up running for like 140 or something. The game was close, and the Jets managed to pull ahead. They put it into overtime, and they won. And the Titans had a chance to tie it up in overtime with about 5-6 seconds left, missed a kick, and that was that. So they actually won. And probably like a lot of other people, even the people I was with, we all sort of made plans like, hey, yeah, I'll be home by this certain time because we'll probably leave early because they're probably going to get killed. But they kept us there, and to their credit, they won. And, you know, Kev, you've probably done that with the Lions many times. But this was a game, you know, and we went back and thought about it, and I haven't seen a Jet win at home. Now, I don't go to every game. I only go once in a while, probably in like 4 years or something for the games we've gone to, 4 or 5 years. So it was nice.
Yeah. Well, maybe it was your birthday present.
Maybe. I mean, that's what it seems like, and it's good that it came around. So
yeah, well, it was Mike Vrabel that gave you the birthday present because some of his coaching decisions weren't exactly astute and brilliant. I have to say this, a couple things. Last night, the Brady versus Belichick game apparently got over 30 million views. I know Russ stayed up definitely for that one, but I have to say, I really hate when a narrative for a game doesn't actually match the game. And Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth are pretty good announcers, but Collinsworth was like, "Oh my God, you know, Tom Brady was great, but you New England fans, you got to look forward to Mac Jones. He's going to be fantastic." I mean, okay, he had a nice game. He's a rookie. He didn't make a ton of mistakes, but the hyperbole that was being pumped in about Mac Jones just made me sick. It was so ridiculous. And they were selling this narrative about Belichick and Brady, and they hugged at the end of the game, and Belichick went into the Tampa Bay locker room afterward. It was all a bunch of horse crap. So it really
seemed like it was an underwhelming game too.
Yeah, and like the Buffalo Houston game yesterday, it was pouring down rain, and that affected the quality of the play. Although the Bills won 40-0. The other thing was to emulate TNT earlier in the week. There was an outage for the Buffalo Houston game that prevented the play-by-play to be coming from Buffalo. So the studio guys like James Brown and Bill Cowher were having to do play-by-play for that particular game. And after the game, it was
the Buffalo power grid stinks, Mike. That's what it seems like.
Well, I would have liked to have seen that. I would have liked to have seen that.
If you have a car that's like a transformer, yes, your block will go out, right? But there should be backup generators and everything else at a football stadium.
Well, okay.
Well, this happened at the Flyers game Saturday night too, right? Saturday night Flyers game, same thing.
Yes, it was quick.
Russ, the problem is the power didn't go out at the stadium. The lights and everything else, there was no problem. The explanation that came out was, I didn't understand it. They said there was a car accident in Orchard Park at 2:00 in the morning, and that there was some sort of downstream power situation that ended up affecting the broadcast 12 hours after the accident. It made absolutely no sense.
Sounds like a lot of words.
I'm calling bull. upon it.
Electricity is witchcraft, after all. So who knows? It could be anything. I mean, it could be, who knows? We don't know how. We don't, have you ever seen electricity and yet you pay for it every month? I mean, think about it for a second.
I have seen it when it's sparked up on a bad outlet and you almost get killed. So I have seen it.
Oh, we got a friend down there, Kev.
We do, yeah. She's decided that. I just walked in the door before I got on the podcast.
Yeah, that's what happens.
I feel like the oddball here. I'm the only one who doesn't have a dog.
So anyway,
you have the Leafs, Mike.
You started to tell us, Mike, about what happened when the national broadcasters end up having to do the game.
Yeah, no, I mean the signal cut out at the beginning of the third quarter. The screen went blank. They went to commercial. They came back, and it was the crew in New York, and it wasn't just like one of them. It took 5 of them to do the job of 2 people in the booth because none of them are play-by-play guys. So it was Phil Simms, Boomer Esiason, Bill Cowher, James Brown, and one other panelist, sort of like round robin broadcast. It was really bad. It was really I mean, because really they weren't prepared. They didn't know some of the names and numbers of or they knew the numbers, but they were, I think they were looking up on like ESPN to find out the name of the player that goes with the number. And then Nate Burleson is the other guy. And then finally they went back to the crew, to the broadcast crew in Buffalo with about 3 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter when the game was already decided. So, and one other thing, the baseball, American League baseball playoff. I think that there are, I would say, a couple million Toronto Blue Jays fans that would like to line up the Washington Nationals and put in front of a firing squad and shoot, because 2 games in a row, the Nationals had chances to beat the Red Sox. They had a bases loaded 1-out situation in the 8th inning on Saturday, only got a run out of it, and then Boston got 4 runs in the 9th. And then yesterday they were up 5-1 and let Boston come back, and they ended up winning 7-5. And because of that, the Blue Jays missed the playoffs by a game. And it's now Red Sox, Yankees in the AL wild card. All I have to say is this, Blue Jays, you should have stayed in Buffalo longer because your record was really good in Buffalo.
I'll tell you the odd thing about this whole thing. For years, the Expos fans hated the Nationals. The Nationals never used their records. Then they finally started to use their records. Even after it said in the Hall of Fame they don't use their records. But then a couple of years ago they decided. But yesterday, Expos fans online were like saying, yeah, this is great because, they basically, that team eliminated Toronto. And I was like, Canada is a weird country. That's all I can say.
It's a weird country. It's a close
nice people though.
Yeah, nice people.
Really,
nice people. Really, fortunate that they play hockey so well up there. We got definitely improves our sport. All right, let's get started. We've got a lot going on. A heck of a lot going on. All right, here we go. And we're going to talk about the Montreal Canadiens and why they're going to win the Stanley Cup, because I've been into it today. I've been drinking the Montreal Kool-Aid all day. Here we go. I'm looking at my clock because I don't make that mistake anymore. Hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, October 4th, 2021.
I'm Michael Agello, and how about them Yankees?
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen, Hockey Buzz.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you on the comings, goings in the hockey world, wearing my Hockey Buzz shirt. And the craziest thing about this Hockey Buzz baseball shirt is that I love this shirt. The company that somebody has sent to me as a trial, sometimes I get things sent to me. Hey, would you like me to print these up? And I'm like, yeah, I wanted to print up 5 of them. And I got numbers and sizes from all the people here on the panel and everybody else. And then I didn't hear anything for a couple of weeks, and then this company went out of business. So
I know
But the good news is one of the people who was at that company, who was the big Hockey Buzz fan there, started his own business, and he told me that we're definitely going to get you them shirts. So I'm like, great. I appreciate it.
That's cool.
But yeah. So if you're interested out there in a Hockey Buzz baseball shirt, you see it looks like this. It's got like Eklund on the back.
So you chose Mike Piazza's number.
That's my number, Russ. It's not Mike Piazza's number. It's my number. It's been my number forever. My daughter's number.
You gave Piazza permission to use that number.
Yeah, I did. I mean, this is Pele Lindbergh's number. That's who this is. So,
see, my number is 17 for Keith Hernandez and Wendell Clark.
Wendell Clark, yeah. My best friend from growing up, Dan Wallace, who's our Minnesota Wild blogger, is number 17 for Wendell Clark too. It's always been Wendell Clark, and we've played on more street hockey teams than you can possibly throw a stick.
Who's going to get 17 when you get the shirts made? Is Mike going to have to fight this guy? Like,
yeah, you may have to get 71, Mike. I'm just kidding. Anyway, we're going to get into some things today, but we have to kind of start with the Robin Lehner thing. And honestly,
no, really,
it's not that we want to start with it. It was interesting today because I listened to XM just to hear how they were going to handle it, and they didn't. They stayed away from it completely. And it is one of those situations where we can't do anything as far as, these are all accusations and everything's hearsay right now, and there's no evidence. The NHL is talking to him. The NHL is talking to him that this is going on, and I don't even want to get into what he talked about too much. I mean, with the exception of, that we know there, I've known for years that there are some issues with the way prescription drugs are handled at professional sports teams. It's not a surprise, but his accusations are pretty intense, and we'll let that play out a little bit. Then we'll talk about it. But where I kind of want to go with this, instead of that direct topic, because I don't think we can really do anything to speculate on it, which would be wrong.
Yeah.
I could go off a quote from Chuck Fletcher and work off.
We can do. Let's start there, Russ. Let's do that. Let's go off of some quotes, because until we hear, what Vino has to say, what other people have to say, and right now they're not talking.
Vino did talk about it today, and
okay.
basically said, and it wasn't on Vino. Like Lehner basically straightened that out and said, no, this doesn't have anything to do.
I got the impression that those tweets were separate from each other, and I really did right away, like that there are teams that might have this issue, and it wasn't necessarily pointing to Flyers as that team that had that particular issue.
Well, no, but what Lehner clarified was that he was claiming about, in regards to Vino, was how he treated his players, which you would think has to do with Nolan Patrick, because Nolan Patrick was traded from the Flyers now is in Vegas, and Nolan Patrick had issues that were ongoing, and really they were sort of.
I think it may have more to do with Carter Hart, but that's my opinion.
There was a disagreement between the Patrick family and the Flyers on what exactly his injury was. That's the issue there.
Right, and that issue, and that disagreement is very similar to the Flyers and Eric Lindros and all kinds of things we've seen throughout the years. The Flyers have a history, unfortunately, of disagreeing. What we were saying right now.
They didn't transcribe the quote, but basically,
what did he say?
He said, as far as he knows, nothing has gone on, but I can guarantee you that because of all this, there's probably a lot of questions being asked by Chuck Fletcher in the organization, because it's easy to say, as you know, like, you don't know everything, because sometimes things don't get to your desk. And I bet you he's checking on a lot of those things.
Right. And just to touch on that for a second, the way Comcast works is a little important to know here, because I've been around Comcast a lot. I've dealt with them on a personal level. I've dealt with them at professional level. I've gone to Verizon Fios in my house, but no, I've had my issues with Comcast, but I've had some really good relationships with people who were there at the professional level of Comcast. And I can tell you that they circle the wagons very much for their employees, which is what they do. But they also investigate very intensely. So like what you'll see here is the Comcast reaction of that there's that everything's okay. We don't know of anything. We're not aware of any. They're very, very careful about have very good legalese and everything. Be very careful about how it's worded. But they will, if there's at Comcast, there's no question, Russ, what you say is true, that Comcast is going to be delving deeply into this, because Comcast is very important. It's very important to Comcast how they're seen, how they they do care what other people think of them. Put it that way, if that makes any sense. They do, and Comcast definitely doesn't want that. I mean, Kevin, you agree with that? You're shaking your head at all?
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I do think there's another issue here that we can discuss, and it's one that I talked about with Tom Laidlaw today as a former player.
Yeah,
but the decision that Lehner had to make as a goalie, who, with Marc-Andre Fleury, I'm actually writing a column today for Hockey Buzz about, goalies that are facing some pressure. And I think Lehner's among those. He's got a very good team. We don't have the crutch, no safety valve. Marc-Andre Fleury isn't there. And he chose to go public with this. Now, I don't know. Maybe he's raised these issues behind the scenes and gotten nowhere and feels that it's an important issue. And I think we all think it's an important issue that it does need to be raised. But, the question that Tom and I kicked around is, from a team perspective, like we've criticized, at least I have, I don't know if you guys who were not vaccinated as being not team guys. Lehner here is now bringing a lot onto the Vegas Golden Knights and really on himself by going public with this. Should he have, and again, it's hard to know for sure. Maybe he's done this before, but should he have first, called Bill Daly and said,
absolutely, he should have. I mean, I felt like,
or at least gone through the PA,
I said
I talked to somebody at the PA today who was wasn't willing to talk on the record yet either. But
he was talking to the PA an hour ago, like as Emily Kaplan reported.
Oh yeah, no, I know.
Here's the quote from Fletcher. I do have the quote.
Yeah.
The health and well-being of our players is our top priority, and any care provided to them comes from the team's healthcare professionals, not the coaching staff. We have no reason to believe any of our players have received improper care, but that's the key. They had no reason to believe, but now I'm pretty sure.
This is all very well. This was written by Comcast too. This is this is Fletcher. Fletcher won't. Right now, everything's going through Comcast.
Oh, absolutely.
Anything they're saying, anything they're putting out there, because this is a major company with the major that thinks of themselves as influential.
Other teams' GMs now are calling within their organization to see how they're handling it. Because
to go back to what Kevin said for a second, I kind of and it's kind of it does merge nicely into what I wrote about today and what I kind of want to talk about with this. So Lehner obviously doesn't care about this kind of stuff, because this is not you remember, this is the same Robin Lehner who got in trouble on Twitter when he said some things before about Marc-Andre Fleury or about his playing time, and this became an issue, right? So if anything, if that happened to me, if I went through what he went through before as a goalie, and then it didn't really work out well when we got put back in there and everything like that, I would have definitely never gone public on Twitter again with anything. But he doesn't. He did it. He did this after what happened before. I mean, remember what happened before? Remember the whole Marc-Andre Fleury being stabbed in the back, Alan Walsh, all that stuff.
And his comments were not limited to just this. He talked about the Jack Eichel situation too, because he was teammates with Eichel in Buffalo, I think 2 or 3 years, and he made his feelings known about the Sabres situation and how Eichel is being maybe and Eichel's not being forced into anything because he's just not going to have the surgery he wants. But he touched on that too, and it's like, you're really touching the third rail here when you're talking about situations that maybe you have a personal knowledge of,
or you've just been told about, like you've just been told about.
Right.
Here's the question. Let's boil it down to this. So he's a $5 million goalie for the Vegas Golden Knights. He has signed a contract to play for them. Should he keep quiet about this, except for letting the league know and maybe George McPhee know and the Players Association? Should he keep quiet, or is this issue so important that it goes beyond his what he owes loyalty to his team, and he just has to raise it because it's that big? I mean, we're talking about.
I think it's the second.
Of those two things,
I think it's the second. Can I bring up one thing? Because I talked to a player today who I knew was a friend of Lehner. Who I know knows Lehner really well. I don't know Lehner very well, so I reached out through an agent and stuff like that, but I have not gotten anything at all. Of course, right now he's being told to not talk, I'm sure, but I did reach out to a friend of his and asked him, was this surprising to him that he would do, if just for all the reasons you're saying, Kev? Like, is this kind of thing that he would do? And he called Robin Lehner extremely principle-based on everything he does. Like, he's a very principled guy, and if he sees something wrong, he does talk about it. That's the way he is. We've all been around people. I've even worked with somebody. I worked with somebody in my band years ago who's incredibly principle-based, and you have to admire it. But at the same time, it can make life very difficult for you. Like, it's tricky. It's a really tricky thing there.
It is tricky. I think it's two things. I think based on all of his previous experiences, he has just become a truth teller, because I think it's probably best for him to get it all out. And that's probably how he sort of remedies himself on a daily basis. So if he had heard about these situations or someone told him about these situations, he probably felt like, you know what, I can't keep this bottled up, and I do have to get it out.
Yeah.
And even though we may disagree on how he did it and the way he did it, that may be just the way he, has to deal with his business on a daily basis. And he probably looked at it and said, I can't just ignore this. I have to at least put it out there.
I think you're right on that, Russ. The more you talked about that, I mean, if you think back to when he talked openly about mental illness, like, he had not been that guy before.
Right.
And probably what happened, as you said, he felt so much better when he was able to talk about it that he just looks at that and everything in his life. Like, it's just better to get it out in the open, better to talk about, better to have honest discussion, him telling his truths and move on. I mean, that's probably it.
And, the thing is, maybe some organizations, maybe the NHL as a whole would have a problem with players expressing themselves on social media. But unless you make it part of their contract that they're not allowed to do it, that's what, everybody has freedom to express themselves. So unless
that's my point, right? That's my point, Mike. That's what I brought about today. And I completely will this change the way teams let their players act on social media?
Maybe the New York Islanders,
and that is a really interesting question, because you don't have, you can say you have freedom of speech, but you can also have freedom to get any surgery you want to, but things can be negotiated. I mean, we've seen this, right? The CBA, in the CBA, now we've seen that, there's no reason that it could be negotiated into a CBA that players are representatives of the team and can't hold private social media accounts. That actually is something that does exist in lots of big businesses. Like there's my wife is kind of high up in her business. She's not allowed to have a social media account. It's in her contract. Not that, she's going to be giving everybody ultrasound secrets, but it's like, that's what she's not, it's really the truth so it wouldn't be out of the norm for people who are getting paid this kind of money to be told that they can't be on social media. That's not at all now.
The only difference is there is a difference. Like if you work for the federal government, you're allowed to be on social media, but there are rules like, hey, there's things you can't talk about and you shouldn't do. But he's a public figure, and other public figures in other areas of life, movie stars, other things, they do interview, they do talk, and I don't think they can.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't think they can approach anybody.
I think you can. It'd be nice if we had a lawyer out there who could help us on this, because we're out of our area. But
I'm going to try to.
We do know, for example, that a company can dictate whether or not you need to be vaccinated or not.
Yes.
So because I wondered, I know from I had one law class in college, and I do remember one of the things that stuck in my brain is that you're not allowed to negotiate away basic rights. Like you couldn't agree to be a slave,
Right.
That's the the far-fetched idea, but could you give up your right to determine which medical treatment you want? Like that's my question. It seems like you shouldn't be able to do that.
I asked the lawyer this question. I asked the lawyer who's a GM, because I thought that'd be interesting. I asked somebody who's at both those things. I said, why is this possible? And he says, well, because it is, because if you can negotiate, that can be negotiated.
Anything can be.
And he said that
not everything. No, not everything.
Well, it can be negotiated, Kevin. There's the thing. It can be negotiated, but you also can challenge it. Like you can challenge it in court and say that this is what you're talking about there, Kevin.
Right.
This is giving away money. But that is a process that would take.
Well, they voted for this. Let's say.
They agreed on it. Yeah.
Right. That they agreed on.
They did agree.
If this went up for vote on the PA, I don't think they would agree on it, because then you wouldn't be allowed to talk about your brand on Instagram. You wouldn't be allowed to tweet about something that that can make you extra money. So I don't think they would pass it. I don't.
Yeah,
they definitely wouldn't want to.
I think you can dictate what your employees do on social media.
You can.
Maybe when they're playing for you at that time, like they can't have their phones with them on the ice, right? Maybe you could say 2 hours before the game, 2 hours after the game, you can't do anything. But they can't. I don't think they can dictate it 24/7.
Or maybe they can do that during the season, Russ. Like I can't see them limiting Mitch Marner tweeting out his summer workout routines, which I've seen him post on Instagram or on Facebook. But during the year, I mean, I don't think there's tweeting allowed in the locker rooms. I don't think.
No, you can't tweet from the locker room.
But let's go. Like we know because players have talked about it, that there are things it would have to be in the contract, because we know from I know through the years I've talked to guys that said I'm not allowed to ride motorcycles or to go water skiing. That's in my contract. So I think if you put it in the contract and they sign it and say, look, then I think you can't do it.
And there are precedents all over the place about you'll see when you see famous people sometimes that work for companies, you'll see their Twitter will say my opinions are only my own. They don't represent the company I work for, things like that. We don't see that with players, which is interesting that we don't see that. Maybe we will see that in the future, but at the same time, I think that they can definitely, you can't stop someone from speaking out, if they're asked a question. Like if you ask someone a question, you can't, that there is freedom of speech to a degree there, but there's not freedom of speech, but they still can't talk about insider things. They can't talk about trade secrets. They can't talk about certain things. So this is like, we're in whistleblower territory here with Robin Lehner. Like we're in that, whistleblowers are whistleblowers because they're usually anonymous, right? Like normally this would be an anonymous thing that would come out because why are they anonymous? Because they're not allowed to talk about this. They're not allowed to talk about this kind of stuff.
They do have a hotline, and he chose probably not to use it,
or he did use it. And
he did use it, and he didn't get the response he wanted.
That's possible, yes.
Which anybody who's dealt with a big company, NHL or any big company, knows that sometimes you don't get the response you want. That one reaction to a bad situation is not reacting to it, and that's what big companies realize. Sometimes the safest thing is just to ignore it completely, because if they say anything at all, they could get themselves in trouble, right? So that might have just taken Lehner over the end, like he'd be like, if they're going to ignore this, now we don't know this yet. And that's going to be the really interesting thing.
I think what I concluded in sort of talking about this earlier today was, I think we have to look at him as what he's doing is a very positive thing, even though as Eklund pointed out, he's going to cost himself some trouble and difficulty, because now everybody will be scrutinizing him even more as he distracted and all that kind of thing.
And he's a goalie, which is worse.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. But I think he wouldn't do this. There's no ulterior motive to do this unless you totally believe it's the right thing to do.
Right? I agree.
Why else would you do it?
I did point out. I mean, when we talked about when it came to the Eichel thing, the first thing that popped into my head was, well, Vegas is a team that has been in on Eichel, and is this him pointing out and we know that Lehner had issues with the Buffalo Sabres when he was there. So there could be ulterior motives in that respect, but I don't know for sure. I'm just saying
that sounds very far-fetched.
It does. But
would come to him and say, "Hey,
no, I'm not saying,
especially because of his situation. He is under a huge amount of scrutiny. I mean, we've all scrutinized him. I've scrutinized him. You guys know this on the show many times. I was like, what the hell are they doing not playing Marc-Andre Fleury? He's a superstar. Now Marc-Andre Fleury's gone. They made their choice. They made their choice to go with Robert Lehner, and Marc-Andre Fleury is gone. I mean, they made their choice before by not playing Marc-Andre Fleury, but now they've passed the point of no return with Marc-Andre Fleury.
I'm waiting for you to become the biggest Laurent Brasseau fan in the
I mean, the bottom line is I respect Lehner for doing this. Like if he's now I do, if he has taken proper channels, that I do want to throw that out there. Like I do think he should have gone to proper channels first.
I do too.
Yeah.
But if he didn't get anywhere with that, and he really felt frustrated by that, then I do respect him for doing this, because Kevin said, there's really not a whole lot upside for him here.
He didn't do it with malice. He actually did it.
Yeah, he believes in it. Yeah.
He literally whatever. Yeah, he believes in what he's saying. Whether it's true or not, we don't know yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to switch to some of the other news.
Go ahead.
Wait, one second.
Go ahead.
I did want to bring this up because I was fascinated that I had this discussion with a friend of mine this morning, and he didn't seem to know that that Lehner had played pretty well last year. I think there's a thought here that he's who's this guy? Well, this guy played pretty well. Like he did fine when he was in that.
Yeah. I mean, and so did Craig Anderson. The reality is no, I don't mean that. I don't mean that to be a jerk. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but the reality is, this is the reality with Lehner, is in the playoffs, he hasn't, he's had, he came in last year and got smoked by Colorado in one game. Now, whether or not that's, fair or unfair, because he hadn't played or what have you, he's been good. He's a better average, better than average regular season goalie, earned the contract he got.
He was put in as a sacrificial lamb in that game after them playing in Game 7. So come on. And they went to him after Fleury dropped the ball in the conference final.
Granted, but the year before that, he's in there and they lose in the playoffs, and I think that had a big part to do with him too. This is just my my thing, I mean, the difference is it's a shame that he was on the same team as Marc-Andre Fleury, who's like a Cregan superstar.
His career save percentage is .918, which is above NHL average. When he was with the Islanders, it was .930.
Oh no, he's been phenomenal, Russ. I'm not saying, but how many playoff series has he won?
Well, that's Kelly. Okay, and him being on the same team as Marc-Andre Fleury is Kelly McCrimmon's fault, not Robin Lehner.
And I'll remind you in that regard what Ed Belfour was criticized heavily about his postseason performance until he wasn't.
And I won't criticize him anymore either, Kevin. If Robin Lehner proves me completely wrong, and I kind of hope he does now after all this has come out. I kind of hope he does.
Here's the funny thing. So the 2018-19 Islanders were 4-4 in the playoffs, but he had a .936 save percentage. Is it his fault the team didn't move on?
No, I'm not going to say it's his. I'm not going to say it's his fault, but I believe his team would have not gotten to where they got to without. I think they got much further, but because of Marc-Andre Fleury, I really do.
Well, that's just because Marc-Andre Fleury is a better goalie than he is.
Exactly.
Right. Nobody's going to argue that.
Yeah.
And
that's so.
That's not fair.
That doesn't say that he's a bad goalie. It just says
I'm not saying he's a bad goalie. He's been put in situations. 2 years ago, they did go with him, and they didn't go with Marc-Andre Fleury, and it ended a lot quicker for Vegas.
Yeah, in 1967, the Leafs had 2 Hall of Fame goaltenders, Johnny Bower and Terry Sawchuk. Just because Terry Sawchuk was better than Johnny Bower doesn't mean Johnny Bower sucked.
No, I'm not, and I'm not saying Lehner sucks. Just because I prefer Fleury over Lehner. I don't think Craig Anderson sucks. I'm just saying that these are two. I was using the example of goalies who haven't gotten it done in the playoffs yet.
Yeah, but Johnny Bower, just because he didn't perform well in that playoff didn't mean he wasn't a playoff goalie.
Right.
He's won in the playoffs before, and he had success in the playoffs, and then
there's a long list of goalies who haven't gotten it done in the playoffs for various reasons. I know I'm Freddie Anderson.
Freddie Anderson.
Right.
Until they do, they haven't, Russ. That's my point. Until they do, they haven't, and that's that. We have to look at goalies that way because they're that important.
Well, the first round with the Islanders.
This is brought up in the chat room, and I just want to discuss this for a second. So
but hold on. He did get past the first round with the Islanders because he played in 8 games. So I'm only talking about people who generally don't get out of the first round.
I don't think that statement is fair. I'm not going to
go. People who think that we're not discussing the fact that Lehner has mental health issues, this has nothing to do with this at all. Zero.
By the way, I didn't say it. I just didn't get into great detail about it. That's what. Oh, never mind.
But that's not why he's saying this stuff. This has nothing to do with that at all. This is not. And anyone.
Let's get to something. Some other news here because there was the 2 contracts of Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson. They finally got done on the weekend, and now we have. We'll just talk briefly about that, but then we have to talk about Brady Tkachuk because Brady Tkachuk is still not signed.
Yes.
Kevin, I look at these 2 deals. It's sort of like the Buffalo situation with the Reinhart deal and the Ristolainen deal. I think the Ristolainen deal was good and the Reinhart deal was not good. I think the Quinn Hughes deal was not a bargain, but a really good deal for both sides. For Vancouver, they get length in the term. The amount is under $8 million for a really good defenseman. I think the Pettersson deal is going to blow up in Vancouver's face. Well,
they're marching them right to free agency. That's
never a good idea.
Yeah, so it's kind of like saying we'll give you a path to the door and tell you how to get there. I wonder if they thought they couldn't go 2 long-term deals, or I wonder if it was Pettersson saying, "Look, this is what I want."
Well, JP Barry just came out. He was holding some sort of availability and said that they were talking about a 5-year deal. But when the reports are when the Kaprizov deal came down and it was $9 million, that Vancouver didn't want to go that high, so they went for the shorter deal.
Yeah, could they have even done $9 million?
No,
I don't
think so.
I mean, Pettersson in the Swedish media too has also been a little bit. So on the Canucks themselves, like he's come out and said stuff like he wants to be in a winning situation, so this deal feels like a deal that probably works for both teams, for both sides in a way. I mean, you don't want to march a guy to free agency, but it's not the worst thing in the world if he's playing for a new contract. Let's take that. I mean, we're gonna get 3 years out of him where he's trying to prove himself to be a $9 million, $10 million player. So I'd like that. I mean, that's what I like about the deal a lot. And I get that part,
but in the last few years, I'd say the percentage is very small of the guys that have had those kind of contracts that actually re-sign with the team.
Right. I mean,
they still have 1 year, right? Like after this, am I correct about that?
The exception to the right. But it's 1 year. He's arbitration eligible, and he could take the ARB award and then go to free agency. Right. So so they have to basically make a deal with him either the year before he gets to RFA or that particular summer. Otherwise, he's got a knife to their throat and he can walk. And
really, though, if you think about it, it's surprising that more players don't do what he's doing. Because you really have control. And if it almost seems now, well, particularly with COVID, there's still a barrier unless you're Toronto of, that $10 million range. Like we're not going there. We'll give you 9 and all that. Well, if players really want to move by that where we get multiple players doing that, I think more have to do what Pettersson is doing.
Yeah, I agree. And even though, we always talk about with guys like marketing to free agency and all that stuff, it's not like a secret, like that. It's not like the Canucks don't know that as well. It's not, they know the reality is that eventually you've got to get past that point of a guy being a UFA. Like somehow or another, you're going to get past it. This way, you get 1 more year after his thing to do it. If this ended right at UFA, that would be crazy, right? Like that would be, we all legitimize that, if this ended with them and them not being able to. I mean, you're saying the arbitration thing, Mike, but they can still win that arbitration case. They can still negotiate, and at least they have some power. They can trade him because they still have his rights. There's things they can do. But if you take it right up to free agency, that's nuts, right? Like you'll never see this.
You can always trade him.
They can always trade him. But
if it was a 4-year deal, that would be way worse than a
3-year deal. No general manager in their right mind is signing.
Exactly. We never see it. So the reality is that UFA thing is not like he pulled one over on me.
But the issue is, and if you use like the Sam Reinhart situation as an example, okay. The Sabres signed him to a 2-year deal and in 1-year arbitration. He was 1 year away from being UFA, and they got a first-round pick and a long-term, a project goaltender in Levi.
Didn't work out for him.
For a guy who was going to walk in free agency. So
they didn't know that at the time, Mike. I mean,
yes, they did. They knew
did. For sure.
They did. They knew he was not going to sign in Buffalo.
Or maybe they did know in that case, but usually in this case they don't know that Pettersson's going to walk. Okay, they don't know that.
Well, the bottom line is this: if they would have had their way, Canucks and every team, the best time to sign a guy beyond his free agency is when you're going to get that 7 or 8 year deal. Yeah, and everybody understands that, and I'm sure they would rather do it. But Pettersson didn't really want to go there, and.
Well, I think the reason he didn't have is because A, they botched the cap to some degree, and B, there's Brock Besser who's going to need a contract in a year, and that's going to be another situation because if Besser gets a big deal from them the same way Hughes did, then there's no way Pettersson's staying. They're not going to be able to keep all 3.
But 3 years from now, we'll see, and by that point we will see the cap going up, right? They will give them a point at which,
but not enough. Not enough.
Well, we don't know that because if things bound back quickly, and things go, it's possible that we could see a big jump. I've been told, but that depends on.
They said the next 2 years, the max that the cap will go up is $1 million.
No, the next 2 years, right? I get that, but after that, if we're doing pretty good, maybe who knows? I mean, and the reality is, I think this is a fair contract on all sides because Elias Pettersson was not that great last year, right? He just wasn't that great, and but everybody who's seen him, the eye test on him says, wow, that kid's amazing. So it's like, eventually, in his first couple years, he was just one of my favorite players in the league. So I don't.
There's truth to everything you're saying, but I still, if I was the Canucks, would want him tied up long term.
Absolutely, you would.
And I think they did, but I don't think they had that option. I just don't think they did.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, what you have to say if you're the Canucks is we're betting on ourselves. We're betting on the fact that that he's going to like it here, that we're going to put a big team together that's going to win around him. He's going to want to stay here, and you're betting on yourself. And I think that's
it's not hopeless for sure.
Right. That's all you can do. And they have him for 3 years. 3 years is a long time. Get it going.
If he had done 5, that would have been a different story. But 3 is kind of telling the story that it's a little iffy for him staying. 5, different story.
It is. But I sometimes, I don't know about you, but I sometimes with contracts like a little bit iffy on both sides. Like
I do not.
It's not the worst thing in the world to have people playing for money. Like to play for their next contract.
I don't know.
It only is if they're a player that was great once and you want to see what they are now. It's not with a player that you're pretty sure is going to bounce back and his best years are ahead of him. That's the only difference.
Security is not overrated, Eck. I'm sorry. Any organization, any player wants security.
Yeah.
We've seen
and it can bite you. It can bite you for sure.
We've seen that happen. That's what I'm thinking, Gav. I mean, we have seen those.
But you still want it, you know.
And the Canucks are sitting there with Eriksson, who they just moved to Phoenix or whatever. That was a secure contract when they signed it. You know?
Yeah, but you know what? Okay, so if you want to expand this one step further, they took a massive risk for Oliver Ekman-Larsson. If he doesn't look great, they're stuck with him for a lot of years.
They did, but they've also never had an Oliver Ekman-Larsson type player there, so they really are fired up about that. They feel like this takes a little bit of pressure off of their young Quinn Hughes, who can't be everything all the time, and
if he can live up to it.
So I think that's. I don't know. Again, I'm a fan of teams going for it. If I'm a Canucks fan, I'm like they're going for it. So I like that. I like teams going for it. Yes, it could backfire. It could backfire. But you know, if you don't try it, you don't know if it'll backfire or work. So to me, try it. You know, they're trying it. They're giving it a shot. They didn't lose much by doing it. They really didn't. I mean, they gave away players.
I'm not sure what they're trying. They're you know, they would have been trying to if they signed him for.
Yeah, I mean, they're just. I mean, they're
they're giving themselves the best team they can put on.
And these signings are just holding on to the players that they drafted. But you know, the going for it was trading for Ekman-Larsson, who is you know in the last 2 years and is 30 years old and has got 6 years left in the contract. That's not going for it. That's a roll of the dice.
Yes, that is.
But they also got Connor Garland in that deal, so it's like,
I like him a lot.
I like him a lot, and they probably, and Arizona was probably sitting there saying we need somebody to take this Larson contract off of our hands too, which they wanted desperately to happen. So, do they get Connor Garland if they don't get Ekman?
No, they don't.
So they had to make that.
But it's still 6 years.
But they also had to pay Connor Garland.
True.
Yes.
True. They did, and they did, and that'll. I think that I don't know. Time will tell. But I'm really.
What did they end up paying Connor Garland?
A little under $5 million a year for 5 years,
which is pretty good. I mean that
fair,
to me,
fair contract.
Yeah, I think it's fair right now. And if he turns into like a real star player, I mean, it kind of reminds me of like Couturier type contracts, which is like ridiculous. Where Couturier's contract looks phenomenal right now for what he is, but. Flyers are gonna have to pay him too soon, so that's gonna be a problem. But eventually you have to pay guys if they do well. But if they do well, you also have success, so that's what you want. So the reality is, you can't sit back and have them do well and not pay them well. It's just gonna, your team sucks. So, I mean, that's why I think that this is sometimes overblown. That's all I think. I think that you want your team to be good, and I think that the feeling is that Larson, who will finally be on a team with players around him too, is going to be a better player than he was.
Yeah. Well. There's some truth to what you say. I mean, he was a very good player for several years, and then all of a sudden, last season he just didn't look the same.
His goal totals have been bottoming out. He went from like 23 to 19 to 15 to 9 to 3. Yeah,
and that's all fair. And I think that but also the Coyotes have been bottoming out too. So it's like
we'll find out. Yeah.
So time will tell, we won't talk about Montreal today. Obviously it's 2:00 already. We won't get into that today. But we'll have to figure that out maybe on.
Let's bring up the Tkachuk thing in the sense that Mike and I were talking offline, and the William Nylander situation where Mike had to remind me that it went right to the deadline of like December 1st.
Yeah, that's 10 minutes before the deadline.
Yeah, this feels the same way. You tell me why. Melnick.
No. That Nylander thing was crazy. I agree with everything you're saying, Russ. I'm not disagreeing.
Well, then why isn't this the same thing? To me, it feels the same way.
Yeah, it feels the same way. I never worry about restricted free agents until you get close to the season, and then I say, well, okay, now there's a problem, and now we're close to the season. He's still in Michigan. There's a problem here that goes beyond disagreement on money.
And I heard his brother Matthew interviewed by Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick a couple days ago, and basically saying, "Well, this is what the Tkachuks do," and that's all fine and good. He says, "Well, he wants to stay in Ottawa, but he basically wants to be paid." And like, okay, well, I mean, Ottawa better realize that he has no problem sitting out, and if he sits out till December 1st at 5:01, he's out for the year. And he'll play because he'll play for the U.S. Olympic team in Beijing. And maybe he goes and plays in.
Kind of a small halo victory, and he loses a year of his career, so it's not really.
I know, but he expects to be paid, Ak.
I think he will be. I think he realizes how much he's got. I mean, we are really seeing the Ottawa Senators and Melnyk tested to the upteenth degree here, because this Melnyk. Melnyk has taken a lot of criticism over the years from his fans. Like, there's nobody more who takes it than him.
If you remember, Ak, a couple years ago, he said this was the season that he would start investing in his team.
And believe me, they're reminding him of that all the time. I mean, it's like, I get more emails from Senators fans almost than anybody else. It's crazy. They are absolutely furious. They want him to sell the team. Can't we force him to sell the team? You know what I mean? And it's just, and of course you can't force a guy to sell the team. It's just like one of these situations that completely goes on and on and on. But people are just that angry. They want the NHL to step in and make him sell the team. But as I've said many times, how much money can a good Tkachuk get if a good Tkachuk could get paid? How about that? There's my little.
Oh, I like that.
but
that question about forcing himself to remind him for so many years, like it went on for a decade. I would get these emails about contracting the size of the league.
Yeah, right.
As if that owners could say, "You're out of here.
Whatever.
You're gone." Yeah.
That fan base doesn't matter.
I remember talking with Bill Daly about it one time, about how the difficulty it would be to try to get rid of a team. Like you'd have to basically get all the owners to agree to buy out that guy. So like you'd have to ask the owners, if the franchise now is worth $500 million, everybody'd have to throw in 12, 14 million or whatever and say, okay, you're gone.
Yeah. And I mean, is there any rule about contracting a team with the NHLPA? I mean, does that matter?
Yeah, I don't even know. I mean, it just would be much more complicated than people.
It's impossible. It's virtually impossible.
Yeah. Then people always thought it, but they just said, okay, we'll just go down from 28 to 26 teams. When they have these trouble with teams and stuff.
I mean, the biggest thing, the reason I worry about this situation is because we haven't heard from Pierre Dorion on this situation in weeks. He was like, don't worry, he's going to make it into camp. And when he didn't make it into camp, basically it's been completely silent. The owner's been completely silent too.
But Dorian and the owners have been silent. The person who's never silent, who we haven't heard from at all, is Pierre Maguire. Pierre Maguire is rarely silent, but he's involved in this situation too. But he hasn't said anything about this,
folks.
He hasn't said anything about this at all. So I mean, that's something that's interesting too. I think that this is to go back to the situation with Nylander. That was I was following that very closely because I was talking to two teams who were talking to the Maple Leafs about trading for Nylander until 5 minutes before he signs. Like it was so intense. Like I was getting texts. Have you heard anything yet? What's going on? We just heard that that they're not going to sign him now. They're going to move him for sure. Leafs were playing a crazy game of poker there. I wish I could write the actual story about how that went down because it was insane. And then the contract happens all of a sudden, right? Like seconds after one team was told by the Leafs that they're not going to sign him at all. Like it was completely. It was just amazing how to follow that in real time. Will this happen like that? I don't know.
The negotiations with Nylander, they got wrapped up in 5 minutes.
I know.
So
here's the bigger question too. So what are the Ottawa Senators without Brady Tkachuk? If they start the season without Brady Tkachuk, they're like one of the 3-4 teams in the league, right?
Yeah, that's a huge.
Well, even with Brady, they're a fascinating team. I love looking at their roster. Because half the roster are guys you'd love to have.
I know.
The other half is just a mess.
They're above the bar for me. Will I watch them on center ice? I will definitely watch them on center ice when they're out there. Because I will watch them.
There's a lot of good talent on that team and players that everybody would want, but they just don't have enough of them. So
they don't, and they really are very much tied into like Brady Tkachuk as being an anchor point for all that too. Like without Brady Tkachuk being there, that makes a lot of those players that we love not quite as great. And that really, but those players that look really great with Brady, but he has them so deeply that I just think that they're going to have to just give in to him and sign him for whatever he wants. But I think that the fact they're playing this game right now at this point is starting to get scary. There's no question about it. It really is. And I don't think, the one rumor, there aren't that many trade rumors about him. The one I've heard, and I mentioned before, is Parayko. Parayko from St. Louis for Brady Tkachuk, straight up. Somebody from St. Louis told me this.
Yeah.
And
that's a bad rumor.
It feels like a bad rumor, but I'll tell you guys off the air who told me, and you'll be surprised. But it does feel like a bad rumor. But how much do they want? How much do they? And even the person who told me had said, I don't know. But
there's always a lot of speculation when guys don't come in.
If it was Parayko and Robert Thomas, fine. Okay, but Parayko's third, and he's 28. Brady Tkachuk is what, 21? I mean,
yeah, but there's a lot, and and Brady Tkachuk, although he's had some. The funny thing is, so someone was telling me about the fantasy pools that are going on. Yahoo has the one that they have, right? That we have ours too, but and ours is different in terms of the way Yahoo does it. Is you draft in a certain order, so they know where people are picking guys, right? And Brady Tkachuk is getting picked around 14th in pools, which is pretty incredible for a guy who's not signed at all. Like that's like people are really high up on this guy. That's
that's because they know he's the center point of that offense and he's going to get power play time, top 3 minutes. So
So people think he's going to get signed, obviously.
No, just to touch on this, because I saw the announcement made by Team Canada and I saw another one made by the Swedes naming 3 players for the Olympic squad. And I just asked why, because I mean,
it's PR and so they can market around players and stuff.
Yeah, they can sell jerseys. They can sell jerseys. I mean, they can start printing up those jerseys.
Well, yeah, I mean, okay, you would hope that the 3 players that they were named would be no-brainers, and Canada's obviously were McDavid, Crosby.
That was the whole plan. Yeah,
and Pietrangelo was the. I mean, I think he's a no-brainer, but when you go McDavid, Crosby, and then him, it seems like a step down in a way. But he's a defenseman. The other Sweden was Zibanejad. Russ, did you see that the team Sweden, the 3?
I did not see it.
Okay, I'll see if I can find it. I know Zibanejad was one of them, which
that makes sense.
Yeah, Pettersson. I think Pettersson was one of the, and I think
Backstrom, even though he's out right now.
Yeah, I'll find it.
Do you think part of this at all is these countries trying to make this more real, like that is absolutely going to happen? That we know it's going to happen.
I'm pretty sure they did it last time too, though.
Yeah, I mean there are still people who think that it's not going to happen.
So yeah,
I mean, and despite what everybody said, there are still people who question it. Like that it's going to get worse, whatever. It's not going to happen. So this does make it a little more real.
Hedman, Zibanejad, and Landeskog were the 3.
Okay,
sounds good.
Yeah, I never think of Landeskog as being Swedish. It's funny. It just, I mean, I don't know why.
Next year's draft, Lane Lambert's nephew, who's named Lambert. What's his first name, Russ?
Brad Lambert.
Ryan.
Brad
Lambert is Finnish.
That's crazy.
Okay, so
BRAAAAD.
No, just I like that though. But I'm going to have a hard time on that. I'm going to see that kid is Canadian, even though apparently he's played most of his career over in Finland, right?
He has.
Yeah.
I've known him as being a Finn. That's the funny part of it.
But I mean, that's certainly not a Finnish name. You can't get more Canadian than.
Well, I mean, there's some guys from Sweden named with the first name Israel. That's a big name in Sweden right now for boys, which is interesting.
Well, before 2016, when we looked at Patrick Laine, the last name is Laine. That's not exactly Finnish.
That's because he says it's Lane, Mike. That's why.
Right. Well, yeah. Just a couple interesting notes. Jack Johnson earns a 1-year contract with the Colorado Avalanche. Russ, after seeing the way he played with the Rangers last year, I'm surprised he got a deal anywhere.
I'm pretty sure he got a deal because of his dirty play and fighting prowess. Everybody is now so enamored with that. Look, I can't tell you how many texts I've gotten from Ranger fans saying Jared Tenorti can't play. We all know he's a marginal player, but he's big and he's strong.
Right.
And now these guys are getting contracts again.
Jake Evans gets a 3-year contract with the Canadians. $1.7 million AAV.
That's a good deal, and it's well deserved by both.
No, they didn't talk about the Canadians today, but we will. But they're a fun team to actually get into. They're more fun than I thought they'd be. I thought because of all that has gone wrong, but they do have some interesting players on their team.
Yeah, Evans was a really good college player, and he's actually really gotten a lot better in the pros. So
yeah.
And here's a player that Russ, and I remember him from the World Junior. I think it was the one in Buffalo. Axel Janssen Falby, who was in the Washington Capitals organization and never really got a chance. He was placed on waivers yesterday and got claimed by the Sabres. So
that's a good claim.
He's big and fast.
Yes, he has speed. There's some ability there.
Yeah. So not a bad move by the Sabres, and believe me, they have enough roster spaces. So
yeah.
to fill.
A lot of options there.
I guess, Russ, the one thing I want to do before we get out of here is I'm going to ask this question a bunch today by all the people around here in Philly. And, I've given my answer to them, but I want to know what your answer is too. Obviously, the Flyers pick up preseason tonight, tomorrow, the next night. Is this going to affect things?
Not initially, but if there's one voice that gets out there that's credible, because right now we're hearing some other things on Twitter for people you don't know, so you don't know if it's credible. And
Russ, the one thing that we did see, the person who wrote it just retracted what they said.
So, but if there's one credible voice that gets out there, or if the PA puts out a statement, then it will affect them. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people fans.
Otherwise, I don't think it will right now.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I all I can say about the situation, just taking away the drug stuff. I
think the bigger question is, will it affect the Vegas Golden Knights? I think the answer is
yes. That is the bigger question, but I think Kevin nailed that one pretty good. But I think that the thing that I will say is I do feel as if I brought it up before, and it's not my opinion because I'm not in that locker room, but I know from talking to players on that team that this concept of Vigneault being a dinosaur is what is very prominently felt in that room. There's no two ways about that. That you can and Terry as well. The two of them are looked at like old money Montreal type.
Look, the only thing I could say is I was critical of Vigneault last year with the way he didn't protect Carter Hart, in my estimation, by making him the third goalie after he said he was going to have a couple of days off. Look, we could say what we want. There's a lot tougher football coaches than there are hockey coaches, and he happens to be a very demanding coach. That doesn't mean he's done anything wrong.
I did get
different culture, Russ.
I guess it is
football and hockey players. Yeah.
No, but the toughness factor is the same, and it is. You have to be tough in both sports. But I'm just saying.
But are they used to like the?
We're not talking about the pills or anything. We're just talking about
we're just talking about on the ice and
how he coaches.
Right.
And yes, he's a very demanding coach, but so is John Tortorella and some others. That it wouldn't surprise me if some players call them dinosaurs based on that, but it still doesn't mean they've done anything wrong.
And go ahead, Ken.
Well, I was just going to say I have a quick story about that. Back in the old days, I used to cover football on Sunday for USA Today, and usually go around, but I did a lot of Lions home games. And Lomas Brown, who's now a broadcaster, and Fred Glover had seen their first hockey game. And they called me over and they said, are you the hockey guy? And I said, yeah, I am. He said, well, we got a question. Freddie and I went to a game, and he goes, yeah, is this really right that the guys who push and shove at the end of the play and kind of mix it up after it's all done, they're the tough guys? And I said, well, yeah, kind of. Yeah, they do that. He says, because, in football, it's the exact opposite.
Right.
The guys that can't take it, they have to push and shove when they're done like that, we laugh at them. We laugh at them. And I said, well, that's what they said. It was a long time ago, but
that's great.
I remember that. They were just trying to sort out how the toughness and intimidation worked. It was different in football, they said. So
that's fascinating. I love that. Yeah. That's really good.
Well,
I never thought of it before, but it's 100% true.
Just one quick note, because we've talked about it on previous shows. The NHL is putting out the center ice package locally. Our local cable will be carrying it for $15 a month extra on the cable bill. So I don't know if that means what they're going to do with the Game Center Live, or if that's going to be available. The funny thing was I clicked
on Ice is only $15 a month.
It was $149 for the year.
Yeah.
Previous,
so it's $150 still. Okay.
Well, so
you're doing it for a year.
It was $15 per month.
Okay.
Wow.
But they're still billing you for a year, not just the hockey season.
Yeah.
Well, he's just saying per month. I don't know if they build.
I think they are going to go per month.
That's the big question. If it's just the hockey season, the price went down. If it's the whole year, then the price didn't go down.
Then it's right. Exactly.
Very few people want the center ice package in July and August.
No, and
No, but you still could get billed for it. Like, I get that.
I mean, I actually am one of the weird guys who actually like having it then because, well, at least the game center coins, because sometimes I just like miss hockey and I throw on a random game.
And the other thing was when I clicked on Game Center, when I clicked on the video on NHL.com for a particular Leaf game, it went right to ESPN Plus. So that might be the way it works.
Yeah. And that's what happens now. Like, and the NHL really did it in a weird way. We don't have time to get into it, but it was the way they did it now, where you click on something and it says the NHL is a new home, ESPN, and it's very strange. Like, at least that was my reaction from the app. From the app,
Right, it's
really
160 a season.
Right, yeah, very strange from the app the way they did. I mean, it felt kludgy. It did, but that's it. But I know, but this is all about selling rights to different things.
But for 160 a season, if you're a cord cutter, you're still not getting all the games.
Right, and you're also
right.
because of the limited channels on these cable networks.
Oh, God.
You could get you won't get the home broadcast. You'll get like whatever broadcast they
give you.
And if the game's on ESPN Plus, you probably won't get it because it'll be on ESPN Plus, right? And then you'll have to get ESPN Plus. So it's like that's another expense.
There are people that are deciding like which two they're going to get, and there are some games people are going to miss.
Yep.
Or find another way. There are other ways.
Yeah, well, whatever.
All right. Remember, folks, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will all talk to you